You are on, Paul.
All right. Hello, everybody. Well,
Great. Our poll has 71% response. So take just a few more seconds, fill out that poll, and we can share those results.
yep, if you haven't seen it, we want to know your level of comfort with using and teaching ZoomText, beginner, intermediate, advanced, or Jedi, and where do you go to get your information on ZoomText? An AT specialist, a friend or colleague, the training center from Freedom Scientific, or other web resources. And as some have done, feel free to put in the chat your answer if you can't access the poll.
All right, so at 72%, I'm going to end polling and share those results with everyone. So where are you from? Most people are coming from the Northeast of the United States today at 29%. Big showings from the Midwest, the Southwest, and the Southeast. We've got a few folks joining us today in the Northwest from Alaska and Hawaii, and some international folks today. So welcome, welcome. How'd you hear about this webinar? Majority said an email from APH. So thanks for joining us today. What's your job title? Majority at 42% said teacher of the visually impaired. Other big hits were O&M instructor, assistive technology specialist, and rehabilitation professional. 13% said other. We also have a few students with us today, so welcome. What type of ZoomText user or teacher are you? 57% said beginner. So excellent. Thanks for joining us today. Hopefully you'll have a lot of really great information to take back to your work. 26% say intermediate and 15% say advanced. Only 2 folks today joining us identify as Jedis. And finally, where is the first place that you go to learn more about ZoomText? Majority said other web resources, but other choices, all at about 20-something% are an AT specialist, a friend or colleague, and the training center at freedomscientific.com/training. So looks like folks have a lot of great resources out there. Hopefully today we'll introduce you to some more. All right, Paul, I turn it back to you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Betsy Ann. We are ready to start now. This is ZoomText Web Browsing Tips for Students and Teachers webinar. So let's talk about some of our ground rules today. And one of those is that unfortunately we have a hard stop at 1 o'clock today. Normally we try to hang around a little bit longer and talk to folks, but there is another event that's happening at 1 o'clock and we'll need the room for that. So we will unfortunately have to end right solidly at 1 o'clock today. There's a link to the handout that was in the email you should have received, but we're also going to be including it in the chat as well. Place your questions in the chat. Please be aware there's going to be times that the chat is going to be turned off periodically. I will try to remember to announce to you that the chat is open and when it's closed, but there will be times that it is closed. We do have 1 hour ACVREP credit today and closed captioning. So let's look at the folks joining us today. 2 folks from Vispero, Mike Wood, Strategic Account Manager for Education, and Ben Knolles, who's part of the Paciello group, who is also part of Vispero, and he's a training coordinator. Let's talk about some challenges, some things that maybe you've run into or your students have run into. Remembering a keystroke. How do I change color? How do I change magnifying on the fly? How do I do something? I just can't remember the keystroke. If that's happened to you, maybe I'm on a website and I'm looking for some information and it's pretty lengthy and I'm not sure how quickly to find the information I want. Or maybe I'm just dealing with eye fatigue, having trouble seeing something that maybe wasn't a problem half an hour ago, but it is now. So if these challenges are things that you've dealt with, stay tuned and we'll give you some information today that will hopefully help you with some of those things. And before we turn it over to Ben, here's our learning objectives. So everyone, we're going to be looking at 3 benefits of using the voice assistant with ZoomText. We'll compare and contrast 3 options in App Reader that enable students to read through web pages. We'll identify 3 ways the Finder tool can help students locate information on a web page. And finally, one last thing to let you know, at the end today, Mike is going to be talking to us and giving us some information about some product from Vispero. Also, if you happen to catch the last JAWS webinar that we did, you may remember that at the end, we offered you something fun. And if you stay tuned and pay attention to the poll questions today and the fun activity, you'll see how you may benefit at the end of the webinar. So with that in mind, let's turn this over to Ben.
All right, thanks, Paul. Let me share my screen here. All right, so I hope everyone's having a good Friday so far. All right, so just a couple things to begin with. I'm running ZoomText on a virtual machine. Hopefully there won't be too much of a lag. I think it's performing pretty well. I'm going to be toggling speech on and off throughout the training, just so I'm not talking over speech. There is a handout, as you guys heard Paul mention, I think. It just has a couple keystrokes included, but I wanted to just show real quick under the ZoomText
menu. Voice disabled.
Under the ZoomText menu, you always can go to the command keys icon there, and you can do a search for a hotkey. They're all listed here. I just want to point that out in case some of the beginners haven't seen that before. So they're all there. And also in the ZoomText help file, you can always access that from ZoomText help and learning, and then the ZoomText help. So, first, we're going to talk about Voice Assistant today. It's a new feature in ZoomText 2021. It's also available in Fusion and JAWS 2021. We're going to obviously focus on ZoomText today. So the question of, why would we need a voice assistant in ZoomText? The first thing that comes to mind is if someone has mobility issues, if they have a hard time typing on the keyboard or controlling a mouse, the option to be able to speak to ZoomText and have it perform commands is a really nice option to have. And then the folks that, have a hard time remembering keystrokes, or some folks just don't want to do the keystrokes. They're not interested in learning. I worked as an AT instructor for a few years up in Oklahoma City, and I worked with a lot of older veterans, and they just were not interested in learning keystrokes. So they ended up having to use the mouse and move the mouse around the screen a lot to activate, buttons on ZoomText. And so this will be a nice tool for those folks. So how do we turn that on? So if we go to I have the ZoomText interface up, and if we go to the Tools tab, Voice Assistant is located on the Tools tab. It's the last item on there. And you'll notice when you install ZoomText, the first time you run it, it'll go through this startup wizard. And on the second screen, you'll have an option, a little checkbox that says, do you want to enable Voice Assistant? So you can enable it from there. But if you don't, it's okay. You can always come to the Tools tab and click the Voice Assistant button, and that disables it. Now the icon has a little line through it. So I'm going to click it and turn it back on. Under the Voice Assistant submenu here, if I click this, we have a Getting Started icon or a button. If I click this, it simply opens the ZoomText help file directly to the voice assistant page. And I'd really recommend you read through this. We're going to cover a lot of stuff that's on here today, but this help file has a lot of voice commands. Again, I included this a few in the handout, but this has a much longer list of commands that you can say. And you'll notice that there's multiple ways to say these commands. For example, to increase magnification, there's 5 different commands you could say. Increase magnification, increase zoom level, zoom in. It says here, practice and try your own variations of these commands. In playing with voice commands, I've found some commands that work that aren't listed here. So it's something good to just play around with and see what works for you or your student or client. The other item under the voice assistant menu is settings. And there's just a couple options here. Number one is the enable. Again, if you click that, it's just like clicking the voice assistant button. It disables voice assistant. This option here, listen for wake word Zoomy. For folks that use, Alexa or other devices, Siri, that you can use a wake word for. You have to have a word that makes the application or device start listening to carry out a command. For ZoomText, it's Zoomy. So that's the word we're going to use to wake him up. You can disable this. There's a couple other ways that we'll talk about if you don't want to use the wake word. You can launch voice assistant with a keystroke and as well as a button on the interface. We're going to use that though. One item to note is if you're using a Bluetooth microphone, the wake word will not work. Not yet. I'm sure they're working on that to get that to where it'll work. But if you're using Bluetooth microphone, you can't use the wake word. And then you have enable voice assistant sounds. We're going to see an example of this, multiple examples. When I launch voice assistant, you'll get an audible tone letting you know now you can say a command. And if the command is recognized, you'll hear a tone. If it's recognized but it fails, you'll hear a different tone. So I really recommend leaving that enabled because it's nice to have that feedback. And then we have input device. This just came out in the most recent 2021 update. I think that was last week, maybe. Now you can, if you have multiple inputs for microphone, you can choose one. And then finally, there's a link to the privacy policy if you want to read that. And then if we click help, it's going to take us back to that help file we looked at a moment ago. All right. So let's take a look at, let's use the wake word and just toggle some settings. So I'm going to use the wake word and we'll see how responsive he is. Hopefully he'll listen to me. Zoomy. Zoomy. Color off, or color on. See, I already messed up. Color is already off, so that's not going to work. So that's the tone you hear when something doesn't work. I'm going to turn speech on.
Voice enabled.
And so I'm going to tell him to turn color on this time. Zoomy. Zoomy. Color on.
Color enhancements enabled.
So now that speech was on, we heard, the ZoomText voice say color enhancements enabled. So if the voice is on, you'll hear the normal message you get when you disable or enable a feature. So all I said was color on. I could say color enhancements on. I could say turn on color. There's different ways you can say it. The important thing is what you just saw in my first example. Know what you're going to say. Try to know what you're going to say before you hit the either the button or say the wake word. It just takes practice. Say the wake word, wait for the prompt, and then say the command you want to carry out. So I'm just going to click the color button to turn that off.
Color enhancements disabled.
And then same thing for pointer. This time I'm going to click this little microphone button. Instead of saying the wake word, I'm going to click this button and then we'll get the same prompt. And visually on the screen, for those of you who can see it, you also get a little icon. It's like a microphone icon letting you know it's listening. So this time I'm going to turn it on and I'm going to tell it to, I'm going to say pointer off. Pointer off.
Pointer enhancements disabled.
So that disabled the pointer enhancement. So now instead of having a large yellow pointer, I have the normal pointer. So
pointer enhancements enabled.
I turned it back on with my
Pointer.
mouse. The other, so we can use the wake word. We can click the little microphone to talk to ZoomText icon here, or we can use this keystroke, caps lock alt spacebar, to get ZoomText to listen to us. So I'm going to do that keystroke. Pointer off.
Pointer enhancements disabled.
So there you go. So a couple more examples. Let's take a look. I'm going to go open. I'm going to open Chrome. Sorry for the delay. One important note here with the voice recognition. The voice recognition is carried out in the cloud. So if you have a slow internet connection, it will delay the responsiveness. And if you have no internet connection, it won't work. And I'm having a little bit of lag here, so that may be affecting what we're doing a little bit. Let's go to APH's website.
F.org.
So one of the nice things about using the wake word is I don't have to switch back to, I don't have to touch the keyboard, and I don't have to switch back to the ZoomText interface. Say I got to this website and I can't see it very well, and I want to quickly jump to 5x magnification. So I'm going to try to just say magnify 5. So I'll say zoomy, 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 oh, magnify 5.
5.
There we go. So I didn't have to, I had to say with the wake word a couple times. Again, I think that's just the delay in my machine, but I can just say magnify 5. I could have said zoom 5 and it would get there. And so that's, an easy way to do that rather than pressing shift, caps lock, and mouse in, mouse out, or
10. 5.
caps up
6.
and down.
5.
So we're going to use this we're going to use voice commands to launch App Reader and use a couple other tools here in a second. So
1.6.
So Paul, do you want to?
Sure. So let's open the chat if we could, Betsy Ann, and let people ask their questions. And also while we do that, if you'll throw up the voice assistant poll question. So just to make sure folks are following along, this is our question. The voice assistant wake word is which of the following? Is it zoomy,
Disabled.
biggie, largy, or supersize me? I love that one. The voice assistant wake word, is it zoomy, biggie, largy, or supersize me? So go ahead and answer the poll question, please, and throw your questions in the chat for Ben, and we'll try to get those answered, and then we'll move on to his next topic.
Hey Ben, I'm gonna throw a question towards you. This is Sully. With regard to using the voice assistant within the domain of a K-12 institution, teachers would pretty much just need a good headset for the students, and whatever the internet provider with the local education agency should just be fine. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Just primarily not a Bluetooth microphone. And And I mean, my internet connection here at the house is actually, it's been pretty bad the last couple weeks because we're all working from home right around here. I don't know if that's what's doing it, but you know, when I'm not using this on the virtual machine, the response is pretty good. Usually I only have to say zoom you once. I think that's just a lag on the machine. But yeah, the better internet connection you have, I think the better it's going to perform.
All right, at 65% poll completion, we're gonna end polling. 98% of you have been paying attention. You got it. Voice assistant wake word is Zoomy. So we're gonna end polling now. Ben, we've got a number of questions coming into the chat. Many are asking on what version is voice assistant available, and if it's an application that works on multiple different platforms such as a laptop, computer, or Chromebook.
So it's available in 2021, ZoomText Fusion and JAWS 2021, which just came out in late fall last year. It will work on Windows. So Windows operating system is the platform it'll work on. Desktop, laptop. And as far as, you know, you can look at specifications for ZoomText on the Freedom Scientific page. If you go there and go to the downloads link, you can see the specifications for the computer, but it needs to be a Windows PC.
For answering that question. Do you have time for more questions, or do we need
to
move on?
Let's do one more.
Some folks are wondering about the magnification making letters look jagged or pixelated. Is there any way to correct that, or?
It's a really good question. So for example, I'm going to open Word. This is just a test document with some paragraphs in there. One thing you'll notice with ZoomText, and you notice it in Chrome, which I'm using Chrome. Chrome works really well with AT, JAWS, ZoomText. But you do notice in Chrome that the font smoothing, that's what it looks jagged. The font smoothing isn't as good as this, for example. All right. So if I can zoom Word in really nice, this is called X font magnification. This is the ZoomText. This is the best kind of font smoothing, X font smoothing. If I hit caps lock Z, this isn't something you would normally do, toggle the type of font smoothing, but I'm going to do it just so you can see the differences. Let me turn speech back on.
Voice enabled.
So if I hit caps Z as in zebra.
Zoom window
overlay.
I'm
sorry, wrong key.
Zoom window, zoom window, zoom window, zoom window, zoom window, zoom window, zoom window full.
Caps X.
X font magnification.
Caps X is going to toggle between the different font smoothing. So it just said X font. I'm going to hit it again.
Geometric smoothing.
That's geometric smoothing.
Font enhancements disabled.
And this is with no font smoothing at all. So what you'll see is the default setting is the next setting.
X font magnification and geometric smoothing.
X font magnification and geometric smoothing.
ZoomText magnifier reader
is on. Both of them are on. And so basically what that means is when an application opens, if X font works, it's going to use X font, which is this nice, neat, smooth font smoothing. Now, if I go to the start menu, we're going to see
search box.
This is geometric smoothing. X font doesn't work on the start menu. I'll zoom it out so we can get a little better idea where
4.533.
So Also in Chrome, geometric smoothing is used. So what, basically, long story short, is if an application supports X font, that's what will be used. If the application doesn't support it, ZoomText will revert to geometric smoothing, which is better than nothing. But that's where you'll notice these, you know, especially if you're at a higher magnification, you'll notice that some places it's a little more squiggly. Now, I was just in the PDF viewer, and I think this is just my computer having a delay issue, because PDFs usually look fine.
Zoom window lens.
So I hope that's answers your question. It's just that, you know, certain font smoothing types work in different windows. Caps Lock X is the keystroke to toggle between them if you ever want to try toggling to see if one works better than the other. But normally ZoomText is going to figure it out by itself and use the best font smooth.
Thanks so much for answering that, Ben. We've got some more questions, but we can hold to the end of your presentation to see if they get answered.
Yep, the chat's going to now be closed so Ben can continue. Very likely that we will not get to everybody's question, but we'll make sure that if that's what happens today, that we get the questions to Ben so he can deal with those.
Ben, if you're talking, I don't think we can hear you. Am I the only one who can't hear Ben, everybody?
I can't hear him either. I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah, Ben, you're definitely muted or off.
I'll send him a chat.
Surely we didn't lose connection.
Could be. All right, bear with us, everybody. Hopefully he'll take a look at that.
Well, he's figuring that out. I'll answer one of the other questions in the chat there. That was, what's the difference between ZoomText and Fusion? So ZoomText, you know, is going to be your screen magnification. Fusion then incorporates in JAWS. So what that's going to allow you to do is, it's kind of the bridge in between where you've got an individual that's using screen magnification, but then they're starting to need more and more speech output. So they're going to then need maybe some of the availability of things inside of JAWS. So maybe you've got a student that you're working with and you're teaching Braille. You know, their vision's progressively going to get worse. I would say take them from, if they're using ZoomText, transition them over to using Fusion. And then you can use all of the JAWS keyboard shortcuts. You get all of the speech output from JAWS if you want to. You can customize that. But then the other thing is you can still use the vision that you have to magnify and enlarge. And as you've seen, like when Ben was enlarging some of that font, once you get to too large, you're not really fitting a lot of text on the screen. So then it makes it easier if you start using the speech output. And this is just kind of a nice smooth transition to go from ZoomText to Fusion and then full on JAWS if they do go completely blind.
All right, so everybody get ready, because I think Ben still doesn't know that he's not heard. So I'm going to stop his screen share. So he may be a little startled. So hopefully this will work. Hey, Ben, it's Sully. I don't know if you can hear me now, but we cannot hear you. So I don't know if you want to give us the thumbs up that you can hear us now. I stopped your screen share on purpose because you were talking and we could not hear you. So I don't know if you turned the volume down by any chance on your mic. That's possible. You can see you thinking. So it's good. You can hear me. And then I'm going to stop my screen share. All right. I think that's a good sign.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. You were a little echoey. Try that one more time.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
You sound good now,
Yep.
brother. You're all
So
set.
basically, none of what you said after I spoke did we catch. So you just want to start over.
For App Reader,
Yes.
did you hear the answers to the questions at all?
No. But Mike was improvising for you in the
Yeah, I
background.
mean the
so-
ones when you answered about the font analyzer and all that, yeah, we heard all that, and then I said
Okay.
that we were going to move on to the next topic, and then you just went silent on us.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
That's all right.
Let me fire up this VMware again. We could take another question while I'm restarting this.
I was just going to
VMware.
say that someone had asked in there, why is the voice assistant program in the cloud? Why can't it be part of the internal system?
It's a good question. Unfortunately, I don't have the answer to it. I'll ask about that. I think probably it's for, probably trying to keep the resources on the computer, minimizing the use of resources. But like if you've used a software like Dragon, naturally speaking, that's on the computer, and those files can get really large. But yeah, that's a good question. But my guess would be just to keep it from lagging the system. I just saw a question that's a really good one from Sharon. I can't demonstrate through Zoom. I'm using yeah, that's normal. When you share your screen through Zoom, you can hear the audio if you share audio, but you don't see screen enhancements. Unfortunately, we can see screen enhancements. I'm running ZoomText on a virtual machine on my computer and then sharing that screen. But yeah, as of now, you can't share you can't see the magnification enhancements through a Zoom meeting. Sure. Okay, let me see if I can share my screen again. Sorry about that, guys. Hold on.
Right, when Ben starts back up, we're going to close the chat, so please hold your questions until we get to another pausing point.
Yeah, Michael, I just saw your message. The same deal with TeamViewer. It reacts the same. Okay. Okay, so let's get back to App Reader. Sorry about that, guys. What are we, 35? So if we go to, we'll just use Freedom's website for a sec. What I was saying was App Reader is located on the Reader tab.
ZoomText magnify. Voice disabled.
And we can get to the Reader tab by clicking the tab, or we can always press Alt and then R. For the beginners, when you press Alt on this on the ZoomText menu, it will show you the shortcut key to activate the tab. This also works in Outlook, Word, Office products. You just tap that Alt key and then look for the shortcut key that pops up. And I press R, and now I can see these shortcut keys. So App Reader has 3 different modes: App View, Text View, and the Speak It tool. We're going to look at App View first. So I'm just going to switch over to Chrome here. Sorry, I'm still getting that lag, but so if I press Alt Caps A.
Software solutions. Freedom Scientific provides.
Alt Caps A is the shortcut to launch App Reader or App View. And in the App View, we can see that it doesn't change anything about the screen. It leaves it in the normal application view, but it gives us a focus indicator over the word it's reading. And we know we're in App Reader or App View because of the little icon next to the pointer here. It looks like a little application window. When you're in this mode, when you're in App View, if you click an item,
software,
like for example, if you click a link, it's not going to activate the link. It's just going to move your focus to it. If you click a button, it's not going to activate the button.
Submit.
It's going to read the text. And so with App View, I can click around the screen.
Software.
When I launched it with Alt Caps A, he began reading automatically. I stopped ZoomText from reading by pressing Control. You can also just left click to get him to stop. If I want to continue reading, I can just press enter.
Software solutions. Freedom Scientific provides.
I press control to get in to stop again. To exit app view, you can just either press escape or click the right mouse button, or you can have voice assistant. You can say exit app view, close app view, something like that.
Software.
And so I usually right click. And when we right click, now that little icon next to the pointer is gone. And if I click a link or mouse over a menu, it's going to act like it normally does. Our settings for app reader, excuse me, I went back to the app reader menu on the toolbar. And under that submenu, I can go to the app view settings. I have all these as a default. This is how it comes with ZoomText. Track and highlight words is on. We can take that off. You can have app view automatically end at the end of the document rather than having to press escape. And then you can change this, the highlight to a block or an underline. You can see a preview of it down here in the preview window at the bottom of this window. You can change the color. So you can really personalize it. Highlight tracking, this has to do with how the screen moves and tracks with the word that's being read. Edge is the default. That's pretty much what I leave it at. You might play around with them to see what works better for you, but Edge seems to jump around the least amount, meaning the screen doesn't move a lot. It depends on how the magnification level you're using as well, but I usually just keep it on Edge. And then you can change the thickness and the transparency of your highlighter. So under app reader, continuing, we have text view. This is similar to the old. Visually, it looks a lot like doc reader. If any of you are familiar with older versions of ZoomText, if I press Alt caps T is in text.
Software solutions.
It takes that text and puts it in this text view where I have a more contrasting background. I can go to settings here and I can change the color schemes. I can make it again. I can change the highlighter. I can change the text color and the background color, and so on. I'll move a little quick here. I'm sorry because of the technical delays. The last item under app view is the speak it tool, and that's Alt caps S is in speak.
App reader, speak it tool.
Speak it tool is a nice tool if you're exploring a screen or maybe a new piece of software. You can click a word, and like in app view, you can click a link
products
and it won't activate the link or the button. It'll just tell you what it says. So if I go to Word, for example, app reader works in app. All these work in Word as well and Outlook. But if is getting familiar with a new application, using the speak it tool to, if they can't see what certain buttons and controls are at the top in the menus, using Alt caps S or telling voice assistant to start the speak it tool, they can explore the application. So for example, if I don't know what some of these buttons are, I can click
bullets, numbering, center CTR.
So, and again, there's a few settings under the menu for that as well. We're running short on time, so I'm going to go ahead and move on. Can we take one quick question, or Paul, go ahead and ask your question about this?
Great. I'll launch the poll for our app reader question.
All right.
And chat is open.
Yep, chat's open. And this is a true or false question. The app reader tool in ZoomText can only be used when browsing the web. True or false? Put your questions in the chat. We'll try to get some of those answered. And the app reader tool in ZoomText can only be used in browsing the web. True or false?
Ben, there's a question sitting here that says, can you use the app reader with the Google products like Google Classroom or Google Docs or Slides?
So if you're viewing those in like Chrome on a Windows machine running ZoomText, app reader should work, I believe. Mike, let's take a note of that question and who asked it so I can get a more detailed answer for them. Unfortunately, I'm not. I want to make sure I give an accurate answer on that one. It's a good question. All right.
Well, it's 61% completed. We're going to close the poll. 98% correctly responded false. App reader tool in ZoomText can only be used when browsing the web. That is false. 11% got it, said it was true. So we're going to go ahead and close the chat. And Paul, I'm giving it back to you.
All right. And Ben's going to talk to us now, I believe, about the Finder tool.
Correct. All right, Finder. So the Finder tool, I'm going to switch over to the ZoomText interface. Let me minimize this. All right, so under tools, the first item under tools is the Finder tool. And so what's Finder going to do for us? It's, like it sounds, is going to find text. We're going to search web pages for information. For those of you that web pages, as well as you can use this in Word and Outlook. For those of you familiar with JAWS, you probably know about the JAWS find, the links list, JAWS key F7, headings list, JAWS key F6. The Finder tool in ZoomText is similar tool where we can open one item and then gather a list of things like links or headings and search those. So I wanted to show this because for students that are having to do research or clients that are looking at unfamiliar web pages, I think this Finder tool can be can really help them get familiar with the page or more quickly figure out if the page has the information that they're looking for. So I want to show a few examples of that. So I'm just going to use the APH website as an example. And let's say the scenario is I want to find the contact. I want to search for the contact link. I need to find their phone number or an email address or something, or their physical address. The keystroke is Control Caps Lock F, or we could tell the voice assistant to simply, we could just say Finder and it would launch this. This Finder window, we have a few fields here. The first one is a combo box. When you first open this, it'll have all text. That's the option that's selected. But you also have options like headings, links, forms, controls. These are things you can search within the page. To the right of that, we have a search box, which you'll notice has an orange background. This means there's no search results yet. When we type a search that, for example, I can see the word welcome there. I'm just going to type welcome. When you type some text where ZoomText just finds,
Yeah, he's gone silent.
Yeah, must be his internet connection.
I think so too.
All right, let's see. Let me send him.
Yeah, because that's why I think that lag is going to, because he's using a virtual machine going over, and then he's going over, with us here through Zoom.
It had that sound like connection terminated, like there's just
like he's on AOL dial-up in the 90s.
Right.
We gotta get him some upgraded internet over there.
Oh, good. He caught the message. Look at him. He's a pro. It's nice working with pros. Hope we're getting everybody's weekend off to a good start with some of these shenanigans, by the way.
I'm looking here. So I answered one question in the chat, a couple there with the Google Apps. I'm going to have to confirm that as well for you. So I took note of names here, and we'll drop an email out to you, or feel free to email me as well, mwood@vispero.com. And if there's a question that we didn't answer today, and I'll get you the answer.
I think you're back, Ben. Maybe not.
Nope, not audio is definitely not.
And then Amy Lewis asked, is ZoomText a good program for my college-bound student, or would JAWS be a better program for her? So it really depends on her needs. If you want to email me separately and kind of give me what her needs are, what her requirements are, we can kind of go in depth. I can also get you a demo of the product so you can test it out with her and see. But I think that's definitely one we'd want to chat about and see what her needs are. So Amy Lewis, feel free to email me.
Okay, so in an effort to make sure that we zero in on our learning objectives, oh, here comes Ben again, man, he's a trooper.
Hey guys.
Woohoo!
So if at first you try again, right?
Yeah, so I heard the comment about AOL from the 90s. You're right. It was real. I could barely hear it, but
don't pick up. Someone picked up your phone. They disconnected.
Yeah, right. All right, I'm sorry, folks. I'm going to go ahead and talk through this while I'm restarting this. So just to talk through Finder, I was going to show the example of trying to find a contact link on a certain website. Using the Finder tool, we can type the search string and then use those left and right buttons to go through the page to quickly find what we're looking for. Hopefully, maybe I can get this going and I can show you just real quick an example of it. But so you could search just a text string. You could change that box. I'm not sure if you guys saw it when I brought the window up, but the first option there is it's a combo box where you can tell it to search all text or specifically links or headings. The examples I was going to show was searching specifically for a link. So if we change that box to the combo box to a link, and then in the search box type log in, for example, if that was a search result and we press the forward button, ZoomText would focus in on that link and then we could activate it. And then the same with headings. We could do a search for the headings on the site, or just pull up a list of headings so we can see what they have. We got about 10 minutes left. I think I might be able to demo this. I appreciate your patience. Okay. Let's try this one more time.
While you're booting up there, Ben, I'll take the time to tell everybody. So you're going to get a follow-up email. In that email after this, it will probably come out next week, since today is TGIF. But in that email, there'll be a link to where you can learn more about ZoomText through APH, where you can purchase it, of course. And there'll also be a quiz question. And if you were paying attention today to some of the questions we asked earlier, it will be one of those questions. And what will happen is if you click on that, answer that question, you'll then be entered in a raffle to win a 1-year license of the software of your choice, JAWS, ZoomText, or Fusion. So be on the lookout for that email.
Okay. So I'm just going to use this is my homepage, readingscientific.com. So I'm just going to use this as an example. I've used caps lock Control F to bring up the Finder. And again, real quick, the window here, we have a back button, a forward button, a little hand that's an execute button. So if I find a link in my search, I can just click this button here and it will launch the link rather than me having to find it. This is an app reader button, meaning if I find a heading that I want to look at, I can activate app reader from here. So let's just do an example. Say I've never seen this web page before and I want to see what kind of heading structure there is. I'm going to click on the combo box and I'm going to change it to headings. And I'm going to click this list over here. I don't know what to search for, so I'm not going to put anything in. I'm going to click this button that expands this list view. So here's my headings right here. I can see the name of the heading and I can see the heading one. So I could kind of get an idea of what's on the site from here. So
Software Solutions, heading 2.
So there, I clicked on Software Solutions and it hops me down to that heading. And I'm going to go and try to hit the app reader button to see if it'll start reading from there.
Software Solutions. Freedom Scientific provides software solutions.
So again, caps Control F or voice command finder. If I wanted to look at a list of links on the page, but I don't know what I'm searching for, again, I can hit a list and it's going to go grab all the links and put them into one dialog box here. I found 62 links. And so I could go through this list and say I'm looking for downloads. I could press D for downloads. I can use first letter navigation. And I've highlighted that. And now it's a link, so I can click this execute button in the top right. And I did that, and it expanded this menu. It's not the best example, but it did work. So to put this in, you know, say a user or a student is wanting to do a search for, you know, Nelson Mandela. They could go to Google, find a link to, you know, maybe Encyclopedia Britannica or another organization or site that has an article on Mandela. They load that page and say they specifically want to know about, you know, when he was on Robben Island. They could open Finder, change the combo box to headings, and then expand the list here and just see if there was, you know, anything in the list that said Robben Island or imprisonment or anything like that. And that would save them the time of scanning or having app reader read the whole page looking for that one subject. So this is it's a really nice tool. It's a nice, powerful tool that I would really recommend using on the web for your students. And with that, I think I'm going to hand it back over. Again, sorry for the technical difficulties, everybody.
No problem. This is just part of the world we're in at this point. So
Yeah.
I'm going to take the screen share for the moment.
Yeah.
And let's go, instead of to our last question, let's go to what we've discovered. To Betsy Ann, what have we discovered today?
Actually, Paul, I'm gonna jump in here, but I think we do have time for that poll question. So Betsy Ann, why don't you throw that third and last poll question out about the Finder tool? Paul, you want to go ahead and read that off?
Sure. So the Finder tool allows you to quickly find what information on a web page: headings, links, text, or all of the above.
And as you guys are responding to that question, I'll jump in and just talk about the fact that, along with the fact that Ben is a cool cucumber under pressure, we discovered today that Voice Assistant can really improve efficiency as the kids are working and search for a key command. That the Finder solution is going to allow you to be able to search for headers, links, and text specifically on a web page. So as Ben pointed out, if they're looking for information about Nelson Mandela or inaugurations or the 16th Amendment, so a wonderful way to be able to find that kind of information when they're doing research, right? And that app reader tool will allow kids to be able to adjust the reading rate, choose what is read. And so as they get fatigued when they're doing that web-based research, think about that. And then I would encourage you all to, and think about your strategy on how you might want to teach this to the kids. You know, what would that plan look like? And after you completed going over voice assistant and finder solution and app reader, how are you going to know if the kids are successful? It's that we were talking about this a little bit yesterday. I'm going to do it. Now you're going to do it. Then we're going to do it. Right. That I'm going to teach you, you're going to teach me, then you're going to teach somebody else as a part of that strategy. And so I'm going to go ahead and kick it back to Betsy, and then Betsy's going to kick it to Paul to take us to the finish line.
Great. So some of you have realized that the chat is open. Feel free to drop some final questions as we review our poll. I'm going to close it at 69% completed. 95% shared that they agreed all of the above. The Finder tool allows you to find what information on a web page quickly. So that includes headings, links, and text. All of the above was the correct answer. So thank you guys so much. And Paul, I kick it back to you.
All right, thank you. And so let's move now to a reminder about our annual licenses. If you want to get JAWS or ZoomText from us, JAWS is $90 annually, ZoomText is $80 annually. Get in touch with anyone to get more information about that. If you have questions as to how to make those purchases on the portal, and we can definitely help you get that taken care of. And to talk about what's next, the Freedom Scientific Training Center, if you haven't taken advantage of it, it is outstanding. And the amount of stuff that's been added over the last couple of years, there has been quite a bit of training resources that have been added there. The APH ZoomText annual license page here. Look for that message that Mike has mentioned. And if we have time, Mike, and you want to give us a quick mention of a product, a word from our sponsor, feel free to do that.
Mike, we got time for that. So if you were thinking about making mention of a product that we think people want to check out, why don't you go ahead and do that? Betsy Ann's going to go ahead and drop the closing code in the chat, and then as soon as Mike's done, we'll do a stop and we'll drop that that closing code, everybody.
Yeah, sure.
And everyone, that closing code is small, 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 and I'm dropping that in the chat.
So thanks everyone for taking the time. We will follow up with an email. There were an awful lot of questions in there that I apologize we didn't get to. So the only thing I was going to share today was a newer product we have. We did a webinar on this last week. You can find it on optilectube on YouTube, or go to the Optilect website. And it's a 10-inch handheld magnifier. The cool thing with this is it's 10-inch. It's got a built-in reading stand. This is the fastest demo I've ever given. And this will also do OCR, so you can do optical character recognition. It will scan and read an entire page with this fold-out arm, which is unique to this product. It is touchscreen. You can store images on it, store text, and all that good stuff. So again, feel free to email with any questions as well, mwood@vispero.com.
All right.
And thanks.
You guys rock. Again, we got to do the hard stop. Can't wait to have you back, Ben. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, everybody out there. Talk to everybody soon. Have a great weekend.
Bye, guys.
Everybody.